Welcome back to Maldo's Magic podcast. Today, we journey into the world of the Knights Hospitaller, one of the oldest and most enduring chivalric orders in history. From their origins as humble caretakers of pilgrims in Jerusalem to their rise as the legendary Knights of Malta. We'll explore their history, their mission, and the living tradition that still survives today. We'll also trace their sacred sites across Spain, Rhodes, Malta, and beyond, while reflecting on my own encounters with the Hospitaller spirit along the Camino de Santiago. The Knights Hospitaller, also known as the Order of St. John, to the Knights of Malta. Today we'll be exploring one of the oldest surviving chivalric orders in the world, the Knights Hospitaller, also known today as the Knights of Malta. This story spans nearly 1,000 years, beginning in Jerusalem during the age of the Crusades and continuing into the modern world through humanitarian and charitable service. What makes this order unique is that they were never simply warriors. Their identity combined spirituality, healing, discipline, protection, and sacred duty. This presentation traces their evolution from a humble hospital brotherhood into a global order that still exists today. What is the order? The Knights Hospitaller began as a religious and charitable brotherhood, founded in Jerusalem during the 11th century. Originally focused on caring for sick pilgrims, later they became a military religious order, known today as the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. Some pronounce it Hospitaller, some pronounce it Hospitaller. Okay? Their core identity was faith, service, and protection. So, the original mission was caring for the sick, wounded, and poor pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. This was a dangerous journey, and many pilgrims arrived exhausted, injured, or dying. Over time, because of political instability and warfare in the region, the order transformed into a military religious institution that protected pilgrims and defended Christian territories. Eventually, they became known as the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. Origins in Jerusalem, circa 1048 to 1113. This is when the first crusade was established. It was centered around a hospital near the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Their founder was Brother Gerard, and they were officially recognized by the papacy in 1113. The mission was care for pilgrims regardless of origin or faith. The origins of the order are tied to Jerusalem before the First Crusades. Merchants from Amalfi established a hospital near the Church of the Holy Sepulchre dedicated to St. John the Baptist. When the Crusaders captured Jerusalem in 1099, the Brotherhood gained recognition and support from Europe. The leader of the early order, Blessed Gerard, emphasized service to the poor and sick above all else. The hospital reportedly treated people regardless of nationality or status. This is definitely something very revolutionary for its time. This was very radical for the medieval world. The order's spiritual philosophy viewed service to the suffering as service to God himself. The traditional founder of the Knights Hospitaller was Blessed Gerard, often called Gerard Tam or Gerard Tenku in later traditions, though historians debate his exact background and birthplace. The reason he is referred to as Brother Gerard is because at the beginning, the organization was not a knightly military order yet. It was a religious charitable brotherhood attached to a hospital in Jerusalem. Members of the community were called brothers, like monks or religious servants devoted to caring for pilgrims and the sick. The title brotherhood emphasized humility, religious service, and communal life, rather than nobility or military rank. The military identity developed later, after the First Crusade, when the order evolved into an armed religious order. So, some say, why we call him Brother Gerard? Well, historically, it's accurate because he was the head of the original hospital brotherhood before the organization became the famous military order of knights. And that's why we call him Brother. From healers to warriors. So, the transition during the Crusades took on more military duties to protect pilgrims. They became a powerful religious military order. Comparable orders of their time were the Knights Templar and the Teutonic Knights. They had a dual role, healing the sick and also defending the faith. When the Knights Templar were eventually suppressed in the early 1300s, most of the Templars joined or their lands were absorbed by the Knights Hospitallers. So, as attacks on pilgrims increased and conflict intensified in the Holy Land, the order gradually militarized. They developed armed escorts and eventually trained knightly forces. This transformation created a unique dual identity: monk and warrior, healer and protector. Members took religious vows like monks, yet they also trained for battle. The Hospitallers became one of the major military orders alongside the Templars and Teutonic Knights. However, unlike some other orders, the hospital and charitable mission always remained a defining feature of their identity. A sad time for the Crusades was the loss of the Holy Land in 1291, with the fall of Acre, marks the end of the Crusade stronghold. So at that time, the order relocates to Cyprus, and this is the beginning of a new phase of naval power. So in 1291, the city of Acre fell to Muslim forces, making the collapse of the last major Crusader stronghold in the Holy Land. This effectively ended the Crusader states. The Hospitallers were forced to leave the region, but the order itself survived. This is important because many institutions disappeared after catastrophic defeat, yet the Hospitallers adapted and continued. After leaving the Holy Land, they regrouped and searched for a new base of operations in the Mediterranean. So the first place they relocated after Jerusalem was to Cyprus. So after the fall of Acre in 1291, the Knights Hospitallers evacuated what remained of their forces and survivors from the Holy Land and relocated to the island of Cyprus at that time. Cyprus was still under Christian control through the Kingdom of Cyprus, making it one of the last remaining safe bases for the Crusader world in the Eastern Mediterranean. The move to Cyprus marked a major transition for the order. In Jerusalem and Acre, the Hospitallers had primarily operated as defenders of pilgrim routes, hospitals, and Crusader strongholds on land. But with the collapse of the Crusader states, the order had to completely rethink its purpose and survival strategy. Cyprus became a temporary refuge, but it also exposed the limitations of depending on other kingdoms for protection and political stability. The order realized it needed its own independent territorial base and stronger maritime capabilities. This period marks the beginning of the Hospitallers transforming into a naval power. Instead of focusing mainly on land warfare, they began strengthening fleets, developing maritime strategy, and protecting Christian trade and pilgrimage routes across the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean during this time was a contested world of merchants, pirates, Muslim powers, Crusader remnants, and competing empires. Control of the sea meant survival. The Hospitallers adapted by becoming highly skilled sailors, naval commanders, and defenders of strategic shipping lanes. This transformation eventually led to the conquest of Rhodes in 1309, where the order fully established itself as a sovereign military and naval power. Rhodes gave them fortified harbors, strategic positioning, and independence. From that point forward, the sea became central to the identity of the order. So the relocation to Cyprus was not simply an escape after defeat. It was the transitional phase that reshaped the Hospitallers from guardians of the Holy Land into one of the most powerful naval religious orders in the Mediterranean world. So the Rhodes period was between 1309 and 1522. So they established sovereign rule in Rhodes. They built a strong naval defense there. They engaged in battles against the Ottoman forces. In 1522, they were expelled by Suleiman the Magnificent. So when they captured that, this is where they transformed their force into a naval military force, right? Rhodes became both a fortress and a spiritual center. The knights defended the shipping routes. The order organized itself into different languages or regional divisions representing various European nations. This gave the order an international character that still exists today. The Hospitallers remained in Rhodes until 1522, when they were expelled by the Ottoman Sultan, Suleiman the Magnificent, who forced them to surrender after a long siege. The next era is the Malta era, from 1530 to 1798. It was granted by Charles V. They defended this island in the Great Siege of Malta in 1556. This is where they developed advanced medical and naval systems, and Malta became their defining identity. So Malta became one of the great strongholds of the Christian Empire. The knights built massive fortifications, churches, hospitals, and naval defenses. One of the most famous moments in their history was the Siege of Malta in 1565, when the order resisted a massive Ottoman invasion. Despite being heavily outnumbered, they survived the siege and became legendary throughout Europe. Their hospitals in Malta were also considered among the most advanced medical institutions of the era. Napoleon in exile in 1798. Malta was seized by Napoleon Bonaparte. This is when the order loses territorial sovereignty in Malta and enters a period of displacement. So now this is when they start to shift from the military power to humanitarian mission. So in 1798, Napoleon Bonaparte seized Malta during his campaign toward Egypt. So on his way to Egypt, he figured, you know what? Let me take over Malta too as well. So this was a major turning point. The knights no longer ruled territory as they once had, and many believed the order would disappear. Instead, the order reorganized itself and shifted more fully toward humanitarianism and diplomatic work. Eventually, the headquarters became established in Rome, where the order still operates today. So the modern order. The modern order today is known as the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, which functions primarily as a humanitarian organization. The order operates hospitals, ambulance corps, disaster relief missions, refugee assistance programs, and medical charities around the world. They're recognized in international law, and they operate in over 120 countries. Their motto is defense of the faith, service to the poor. What makes the order unusual is that it still possesses sovereign status under international law and maintains diplomatic relations with many countries. Modern members continue the ancient hospitaller spirit through service to the sick and vulnerable rather than warfare. There's also other modern orders of Malta. There's non-Masonic ones and also Masonic ones through the orders in the York Rite. Some key sites of the order. The original site was Jerusalem. Rhodes was their military stronghold. Malta was the identity and legacy. Rome is their modern headquarters. And Spain is actually their pilgrim routes and influence heavily in Spain, and they're very active in Spain today. So several important locations, as we go over it again, define the history of the Hospitallers. Jerusalem represents the spiritual birthplace of the order and the ideal of sacred service. Rhodes symbolizes military endurance and naval power. Malta represents sacrifice, resilience, and the fusion of fortress and hospital. Rome represents survival and transformation of the order into a modern humanitarian institution. These sites form a sacred geography connected through nearly 1,000 years of history. So, the Camino experience. So recently, I got the honor and privilege to embark as a pilgrim on the Camino Frances from the south of France to Santiago de Compostela in Galicia, Spain. So walking the Camino was living the echo of a medieval pilgrimage. And I encountered, modern knights, which bridge the past and present. And the order still is not just history, it's still alive. So it was an amazing time. All throughout the Camino, there was various sites, hostels with the Maltese flag, the symbol for the Order of Malta today. There was different chapels. I was able to go in and do my prayers and meditation. And I actually did get to meet some operative knights. And the site where I met an operative knight was at Carrión de los Condes. So this is one of my most memorable experiences I had on the Camino, was meeting an active knight hospitaller, or hospitalero, they say in Spanish, at the Monasterio de Santa Clara in Carrión de los Condes. It is the monastery of Santa Clara. This monastery serves pilgrims walking the Camino de Santiago, offering both a traditional albergue-style environment with shared bunk rooms and also private rooms for pilgrims seeking rest and solitude. I chose one of the private rooms, but what really made the experience meaningful was the interaction with the knight overseeing the check-in and hospitality of the monastery. He explained to me that the active knights volunteer their time there in rotating shifts. They often served about 2 weeks at a time. Their role is to care for pilgrims, manage the hospitality of the monastery, and continue the ancient hospitaller tradition of service to travelers on sacred pilgrim routes. What made this especially fascinating was that the monastery still is an active cloister religious community. The nuns within their cloister and chapel life, they remain within their cloister and chapel life. So they have no contact, so they're devoted to prayer, and they're separated from interaction with the outside world. So they're completely separated from the profane. The only time we saw the nuns was when we got a tour of the historical sites and of the chapel or the church there, and they were in the back, basically behind an iron guard, huge protection or metal enclosure, and you could see them, and they were just there, but they were not interacting with the pilgrims. So we had long conversations about the Camino, the order, history, and modern service. He also gave us a tour of the grounds and explained that the monastery had connections to the traditions of St. Francis of Assisi, who is said to have stayed there during his travels. It was very interesting. Also, in this monastery, there was a head of a ram there, and it's above an archway that would lead down to a place where they would get water. And basically what the pilgrims would do is they were told to touch the ram's head if they were, weary, and that would give them strength. So there was many stories, and I think St. Francis was one of them too as well, that he touched it, gave him strength, and he was able to continue on the Camino. Also, this was a site where Napoleon came through and took over. Basically, all the knights and nuns and monks at the time pleaded with Napoleon's troops not to sack it, and they actually were able to. So this was a pretty fascinating site. I enjoyed staying here. It was great, and it was really great to exchange stories, and I helped him translate from Spanish to English too as well. We exchanged stories about our own knightly paths, and he knew that I was involved with the Knights Templar tradition, so there was a mutual respect and understanding there that transcended language and nationality. So I even helped translate a couple times with some pilgrims. He helped connect me with different areas that I could explore and find some nice places to eat. So for me, this encounter transformed the Knights Hospitalis from something historical into something living. It showed me that the spirit of hospitality, sacred service, and pilgrimage is still alive on the Camino today. Another city on the way to Santiago that connects to this order was Porto Marin. So Porto Marin and the Hospitaller legacy. So I found the Maltese cross all throughout, and then also there was in the town square the Church of San Nicolas, which was said to be built in the 12th century. So while walking through in Galicia, I immediately noticed something striking: the 8-pointed cross of the Knights Hospitaller, also known today as the Maltese cross. It appeared throughout the town. The symbol could be seen on buildings, markers, and even incorporated into the identity of the town itself. So above the eye, they had the Maltese cross was above the eye. So, and even the town seal or coat of arms incorporated the Maltese cross too as well. So this showed how deeply connected Porto Marin is to the legacy of the Order of St. John and the medieval pilgrimage tradition on the Camino de Santiago. So historically, Porto Marin was an important crossing point for pilgrims traveling towards Santiago de Compostela. Because of the constant movement of pilgrims through the region during the Middle Ages, military, religious orders such as the Knights Hospitaller played a major role there, offering protection, hospitality, medical care, and spiritual support to travelers on the Camino. One of the most important surviving reminders of this connection is the Iglesia de San Nicolas de Porto Marin, also known as the Church of San Nicolas, or Iglesia de San Nicolas. The church was originally built and administered by the Knights Hospitaller during the 12th century. Architecturally, it resembled both a church and a fortress, reflecting the dual identity of the order as both protectors and caretakers. Its thick stone walls, battlements, and defensive appearance reveal how dangerous pilgrimage routes could be during the medieval point. Another fascinating part of the Porto Marin's history is that the original medieval town was submerged during the 20th century when a reservoir was created. Before the flooding, important structures, including the Church of San Nicolas, were carefully dismantled stone by stone and rebuilt on higher ground in a symbolic way. Even the town itself carries a story of preservation and survival, much like the Hospitaller order that helped shape it centuries ago. After the Camino, I ventured on to a couple more cities. So I went to Segovia and spent some time there. Some reflection on Spain's deep chivalric and Catholic history there, and connection between the land, memory, and the order of knighthood. So after the Camino, another place that deeply stood out to me was Segovia. Walking through Segovia feels like walking through layers of history all at once. The city still carries the presence of an ancient Roman world, medieval Christianity, and the legacy of the military orders. One of the most impressive reminders of this is the famous Roman aqueduct, which has stood there for nearly 2,000 years. Seeing a structure from the Roman Empire still standing and functioning in the modern world creates a powerful sense of continuity across civilizations. This was massive. It was amazing. It felt like touching history seeing this aqueduct there. Segovia also carries echoes of the Knights Hospitaller and the broad chivalric traditions that shaped medieval Spain. Throughout the region, the military religious orders helped protect pilgrim routes, defend territories during the Reconquista, and support travelers and the sick. You can still feel traces of the world in the churches, of that world in the churches, fortifications, heraldry, and sacred architecture throughout the city. For me, Segovia represented continuation. It showed how these traditions did not exist in isolation, but became woven in the identity of Spain itself. The Roman foundations, the Christian kingdoms, the pilgrim routes, and the knightly orders all overlap there, creating a living historical current that can still be experienced today. On the way out of the town, of the city, there was an amazing sight. It was a church of Veracruz. So just outside Segovia stands a remarkable Iglesia de la Veracruz, 13th century church, associated with the Knights Hospitaller and earlier traditions connected to the military religious orders in Spain. The church is especially striking because of its unusual 12-sided design, which resembles sacred architectural forms connected to the Jerusalem and the Crusader world. Standing there, you can feel the influence of pilgrimage, sacred geometry, and knightly spirituality woven together. For me, visiting the Veracruz made the history of the Hospitallers feel tangible, almost like a surviving echo of the medieval spiritual world that once stretched from Jerusalem to Spain. So as I approached it, it was amazing to see this 12-sided figure. It was very striking. And there was symbols, Maltese cross symbols, all throughout. So this is, and the signs stating that this is a site of the Order of Malta. Active orders and temples actually do meet here, and they do actually have ceremonies. So it was very, very incredible to be able to witness it and touch history. So let's go into symbolism and meaning. So the 8-pointed cross represents the virtues or beatitudes. Also stands for service over status. Knighthood as inner discipline, not just title. So the white 8-pointed cross became the defining symbol of the Hospitallers. It often called the Maltese cross today. The 8 points are traditionally connected to virtues such as loyalty, courage, piety, generosity, honesty, endurance, respect, and service to the poor, which are the core items of the Beatitudes. Spiritually, the cross symbolizes balance between action and compassion. It represents both the warrior and the healer. The white color symbolizes purity and spiritual intention, while the black background traditionally represented humility and sacrifice. Even today, the symbol remains one of the most recognizable emblems of sacred chivalry in the world. So, final message, the Knights Hospitaller are not just relics of the Crusades. They represent a continuous current, which is care for the suffering, discipline of the self, alignment with a higher purpose. Knighthood did not disappear, it evolved. So they were not merely relics of the Crusades. They represent a continuous current flowing through history. Their story is about caring for the suffering, discipline of the self, devotion to higher purpose, and the ability to adapt without losing identity. Empires rose and fell around them, yet the order survived because its foundation was not only military power, but service. So, in many ways, the Hospitaller tradition asks an important question that still matters today. What does it truly mean to serve something greater than oneself?